yeah, sure, go ahead and make a horror film, make it on the topic of Candyman. But I don't think you need to, unless you're going to be so true to it, I don't think you need to use the original. To remake it in this way, it feels a bit, needless. I walked away from it not satiated. It was a bit like a bad meal. The theme that runs throughout the new one is obviously art is a big one. And he's obviously a painter. Anthony becomes a painter, and he's almost like a painter with a bit of writer's block, painter's block, or whatever you would call it. And he's like reinvigorated by the story of Candyman, the story of Cabrini Green. So I don't know, it's difficult. I was trying to piece it together. I was thinking, okay, he finds out about Cabrini Green, which I mean, he was born there, but okay, let's say he doesn't know. I mean, it doesn't happen that long ago. He's not, because the film makes a suggestion when he's told about Cabrini Green as if it's something that happened in like the mid 15th century, you know, but it's like it happened in the 90s. It wasn't that long ago, right? And on top of that, you live there. You live right in that area. So I'm not sure how he managed to get away with never hearing that story. But okay,
the baby of...
Also, his mum lives right there.
Yeah, exactly. But let's even say he's been...
There are some big blind spots, for sure.
Yeah, it seems like a strange one. But then on top of that, I still couldn't figure out what exactly the logic was behind him finding out about Candyman, him finding out about Cabrini Green, and... other than he's taken over by the spirit of Candyman. And that's the other problem I had, which is that the film says that Helen was effectively a Candyman in her own right, even the new one. But she's never mentioned in the sort of dossier of Candymans after that. She's shown in this sort of puppet form, and we hear her voice in the tape recorder. But the actual depictions of the Candymans are all these past situations that happen with, oftentimes it'll be a black man caught in the middle of a crime and unfairly beat up and police brutality. But that police brutality element there's not enough extrapolated there for it to be they can't ride the coattails of it that much because we're not given enough information there. A lot of it is just assumed knowledge. So they leave out Helen. And then there's this sort of, these are all the police brutality people, the victims of police brutality, going all the way back to the original Candyman in the 1800s. But then I was thinking, okay, but what's the problem with the new guy? So he's not brutalized by police. He's brutalized by, an art critic. So he falls now in the...
But is he there? How is he brutalized by an art critic?
But I mean, but that's what I mean. I'm saying...
It's not really brutalized.
But I'm saying it ironically. That's what I mean. He's not brutalized at all. He's just critiqued, right? But what I'm saying is that how can he align himself with
the generations before him?
Right. So, and what I mean is, let's say he can, he can, in the sense of, he can empathize with them. But if he's allowed to be in that, then why is there not a scene where Helen is Candyman? Because they suggest that she's almost the bearer of his hook afterwards. But then she's sort of cast aside, and then it becomes, you get that that I didn't understand. So that it seemed the problem is, I think, and this happens in a lot of newer films, and in particular when there's remakes, which is that you have a topic here that obviously runs quite deep, and the topics of things like Cabrini Green, and we can go back and we talk about city films, which we've discussed with Solaris, but obviously it's a huge topic in Candyman. The original Candyman plays it off as actually quite elegant with the topics of Cabrini Green and obviously going back to Puerto whereas the new one is so on the nose that it starts to almost like it's like a Jenga set, right? They're trying to pull it apart themselves, struggling to do it. So yeah, I think the politics of it is confusing as hell with the new one. I didn't really see where it was really going.
I mean, if you look at the old one, there are obviously loads of themes which, even as a novice, I kind of picked up on.
Yeah.
But when you get to the point where two film scholars, you guys are watching it, and you guys can't piece together what's going on in the new one, kind of says a lot about the film. Because I didn't pick up on any of those stuff in the new one. I just thought it was kind of flat. I didn't really get anything from it.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to make two quick comparisons, right? Two movies. So we can throw them now. We can do a little whoosh on the screen. Put a little ching.
Right.
Right, we can do that later on, right? There's two films I'm going to pick up. One is Get Out.
Okay.
Directed by Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
And the other one is District 9.
Okay.
So the reason I want to bring them both up is because Get Out is, so for those who haven't seen it, I don't know how much information we're going to give. I think it's a 2018 movie, or 17 maybe, but it's a Jordan Peele movie.
Yeah.
About so this guy, it's Daniel Kaluuya, I think he plays it, and he's not English in the movie. I think he's American, right? He plays an American because he's British in real life.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's this American guy. He's a black guy and he's with a white girl, right? So there's this straight off the bat. There's a tension there that obviously builds to the point where I'm going to spoil the movie for anyone who hasn't seen it. But it turns out that behind the scenes, her family are this kind of race of this white supremacist race. Aryan, I don't know exactly how it is, but it's a sci-fi film where they try and sort of take traits of black people and, you know, take like the brain of a smart black, something like that. I can't remember now. I don't want to miss, but along those lines. But the story as a story works well because there's obviously a very clear theme that runs behind it, which is that, and actually the new Candyman touches on this, but doesn't dive in properly, which is that of the many things that they're exploited over, they're often, black people often have, and especially African Americans will have things like their art, their culture stolen from them, like, right in front of their faces, right? While also being suppressed, we're talking back to the point where they're like actually maligned and so many things, right? But that movie does it well because it uses that history to build attention. So we as an audience, we have that in the back of our minds the whole time while watching it. Whereas the new one, it for me doesn't do it as well because there's a few things in conflict there that one thing's tension removes the other thing's tension. So it ends up feeling a bit flat in parts. The other movie I wanted to discuss is District 9 because I actually think that the new Candyman is a lot more similar to District 9 than it is to the original Candyman, or to a film like Get Out, even though obviously Jordan Peele's a part of it, but I still think it's closer to something like District 9.
Where the main guy like gets a skin condition and a disease and transforms.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just that. Obviously, there is this body horror element, and I actually kind of like the body horror element in Candyman. I think it does build quite well.
There's something I just will not agree with you on. I'm just not a body horror fan.
I do think there's a few glaring issues. Like, first of all, I'd have gone to the doctor straight away. He goes to the doctor when it's like up to his fucking ear, right? Like, it's like, Jesus Christ. Like, I would have gone when it's like up to my wrist. I was like, this is like, no bee should sting this badly. Like, where it's like infected my ear, right? But yeah, in District 9, obviously, yeah. So set in South Africa, obviously, very clearly a film about apartheid. So the film, I think, doesn't even hide that. I think it discusses it a few times. It's about apartheid, but in this case, obviously, it's aliens land in South Africa. And they get put into these, effectively they become ghettos where they live there. And the protagonist of that movie, in an attempt to understand them, but also he has to remove them and put them in a new place, he ends up getting affected and becomes a prawn. The alien's called prawns in that movie. So he almost, by mistake, falls into their world and sort of learns to align himself with them. And obviously there is a body horror element to it as he becomes a prawn. But there's obviously that political background of, like I said, the apartheid. And I think in the new one, there's an element of that, which is that he is an African American, but he lives in, we mentioned earlier, it's this swanky apartment building. And even though he is from Cabrini Green, or in the case of District 9, he is from Johannesburg. He is from this area.
He's been removed from that world.
Yeah. And now he's slowly falling back into it and he becomes Candyman. Candyman is being in that movie is a representation of those people, that era of Cabrini Green, right? That era of suffering and struggling and whatever. And we physically see that manifest as he goes through the movie. So for me, that was the biggest likeness. And I think if it had even, let's say, remove the original Candyman reference, lean in completely to that District 9-ness of it, I think actually works quite well. I think there is an interesting story, which is that he doesn't realize where he's from. And that, I think, politically is more interesting No, when I was watching it, I made a note and I thought it doesn't need the original Candyman. I said that earlier on. I don't think it needs the original Candyman. And then I thought, but why does it use it? Because the original Candyman, it wasn't like a blockbuster hit, right? It's not like Jaws. Like,
no, but I think it still does have a cult following.
Right, yeah, true. I guess so, yeah. I mean, and it's sad. If there's that sort of cynicism behind it, it's a bit of a shame, really. Because speaking more generally here, I'm more pro. I don't mind the idea, especially these older films shot on film, re-release them, put them back in the cinema. I think they age well. I think the original Candyman, fine, look, the team behind the new one, yeah, sure, go ahead and make a horror film, make it on the topic of Candyman. But I don't think you need to, unless you're going to be so true to it, I don't think you need to use the original. I think re-release the original if it's got a cult following and let people see it. Let's have a nice big, cinema viewing of it. But to remake it in this way, it feels a bit, needless. It feels a bit like it detracts from the original.
Yeah.
And for the people because I think a lot of people, I'm willing to guess here that maybe a large percentage will have never even watched the original and probably won't even go back to it. Yeah. I think it's a bit of a shame.